The following program includes graphic images and mature subject matter intended for adult audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Here's Carolyn Jarvis.
Good evening and welcome to 16 by 9. It's a part of Canada's meat industry we rarely hear about, the slaughter of horses for human consumption. Even though Canadians actually eat very little horse meat, we're one of the world's biggest suppliers. Most of the meat is shipped to Europe, but as Sean O'Shea found in the 16 by 9 investigation, there is evidence that meat may be tainted with harmful drugs. And a warning, some viewers may find the images in this story disturbing.
In the hierarchy of domesticated animals, horses have a special place in North America. But there's a dark side. Most pets never end up here. 16 by 9 went undercover and captured this hidden camera footage inside one of Ontario's biggest livestock auctions. Thousands of horses start their journey to the slaughterhouse right here. Every week, dozens of horses are paraded through the ring and sold by the pound. Most are sold for their meat to a small group of people known as kill buyers. Today, the biggest buyer is an hour late, but the auctioneer waits. He knows those kill buyers are an important part of his business.
You guys are all still doing horses today, right? Yeah. You guys doing horses? Okay. Yeah.
His name is Jeff Groff, and when he finally arrives, the auction gets underway. Groff is one of the biggest buyers in the business. 16 by 9 found out he sends at least 100 horses to slaughter every month. When the auction is over, Groff's truck loads up the horses to be shipped to Quebec. They're bound for this slaughterhouse, Viande-Richelieu. It's one of 5 federally regulated horse slaughter plants that kill as many as 115,000 horses per year. Most of that meat is bound for Europe, but it's also available at grocery stores in Quebec and on restaurant menus across Canada. There are serious questions about whether the meat is safe for human consumption.
From the auctions right through to the slaughter plant, it's ripe for tragedies to happen.
Shelley Granger is Eastern Director for the Canadian Horse Defense Coalition, a group dedicated to ending the horse slaughter.
Is it dinner time soon?
Well, horses, first of all, aren't raised to be food animals, so there isn't an effective traceability system in place. There is a long list of drugs that are banned from entering the human food chain, many of which are drugs that are commonly given to horses.
Drugs like phenylbutazone, a painkiller banned for humans because of links to potentially fatal blood disorders. By law, every horse bound for slaughter must come with an equine identification document, or EID. The EID is supposed to include a drug history, but all the seller has to do is check a box on the form saying the horse is drug-free. No proof required.
We were able to report, and with evidence, photo evidence on EIDs that had been doctored, ones that had omissions, horses that didn't match the description on the EIDs.
In your opinion, should consumers have any confidence that those documents have any value when it comes to keeping the food safe?
Absolutely no value at all.
Shelley's group has spent years gathering evidence she says proves horses riddled with potentially deadly drugs are getting into the food chain.
Grandstands on the front end, Silky Shark.
Silky Shark was one of them, and we know that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Silky Shark was a successful American racehorse who ended up at the slaughterhouse.
Third, number 5.
Did the owner of Silky Shark have any idea that that horse was going to go to slaughter?
No, he had no idea. But he was in financial straits when he had to sell his horses, and in fact, Silky Shark was the last horse that he sold. It was the one horse he had the strongest connection with.
Silky Shark was a horse that had a lot of drugs.
Yes, yeah, 2 surgeries. So he would have had phenylbutazone and probably other drugs too.
Is there any way that that horse should be in the food supply?
If I was a consumer of horse meat, I'd say certainly not.
But during 16 by 9's investigation, we found proof that drug-tainted horses are getting into the human food supply. In 2012, European regulators announced banned drugs had been found in a shipment of Canadian horse meat. And in recent months, horse DNA was found in what was supposed to be beef products, in frozen lasagna and IKEA meatballs sold in Europe. The widening scandal raised questions about where else tainted meat might have ended up and where it might have come from. We thought who better to ask than Jeff Groff, who sends more than 1,000 horses per year to slaughter. But he declined our request for an interview, so we caught up with him outside the auction.
Hey Jeff, Sean O'Shea with the Global News 16 by 9. How are you doing? Spoke to you on the phone.
Yeah.
Wanted to ask you about the safety of the horse meat that you're selling into the system.
Is it possible for somebody to try and evade the system? Yes. We could do a lot of things better, not just in the meat business, in every business. There's people that do stuff wrong, okay?
But if somebody does something wrong here, somebody can die.
Possibly, yes. Yes.
Groff says he supplies the documents required by law, but says he's not responsible for the accuracy of the information filled out by previous owners.
I'm responsible for supplying an EID, a valid EID, and I only buy horses with valid EIDs.
Shelley says even if that's true, buyers and sellers have an incentive to falsify information, and there's little chance of getting caught.
They're going to provide the paperwork so that they can do their business. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's being filled out, according to the truth.
So is there a system in place which is a disincentive for people to tell the truth? Because if you tell the truth, you can't sell the horse, you can't make a profit.
That's right, that's the current system that's in place now. It says that anything goes, for sure.
Next, the dirty truth about the horse slaughter industry.
I never saw or heard of the CFIA doing drug screening. Have they got their ostrich ass in the air and their head in the sand? Yeah.
The following program includes graphic images and mature subject matter intended for adult audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
From the stable, to the auction, to the slaughterhouse, there's nothing pretty about Canada's horse slaughter industry. Meat that may be tainted with deadly veterinary drugs. Allegations of inhuman slaughter at several plants. One slaughterhouse was even caught on camera, dumping untreated horse blood into a nearby field. Henry Shervin was the director of that plant, Natural Valley Farms in Saskatchewan.
We were in the beef business, and the horse business was something that was presented to us during a time of tremendous financial pressure to keep the business going. And it was not fun, it was not profitable, and it killed us.
Natural Valley had its license temporarily suspended in December of 2008 because of sanitation violations and went out of business shortly after. Henry admits there are problems in the industry, and he was part of it.
We were killing any kind of horse you could imagine, and that presented significant issues at times. The experience on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being phenomenal and 1 being death and bad, I'd go with a 1. We didn't do a good job, and I'm sorry.
Henry says that's all behind him. Now he just wants everyone to know what's really going on.
Is there a problem in this country? Is Europe getting meat that we don't know is safe? My opinion only? Absolutely.
This is Susie. Her registered name is Little Susie Q.
In her stable near Ottawa, Mindy Lovell tends to horses that were days away from slaughter.
This is, oh, she is coming out. This is a filly called Easy Irish. When I found her, she was standing in a kill pen.
Mindy has seen up close how ugly the horse meat business can be. That's why she's dedicated her life to rescuing horses.
They grew up trusting people in many cases, you know, and now all of a sudden the humans become almost like a predator as opposed to a friend.
She rescues as many as she can, dozens a year, and she says almost all of them had been given drugs banned for human consumption by Health Canada.
99.9% of all horses, donkeys, mules, whatever, have been on these substances at some point in their life. It is such a common knowledge. I mean, you can't even plead ignorance.
One of the most common treatments is phenylbutazone, a drug used so often it's known as horse aspirin.
It's an anti-inflammatory and a painkiller. Any type of injury they get, one of the first things the vet's going to do is put the horse on bute. You can look at almost any label on equine medication. The majority of it clearly states right on it, not to be used on horses intended for human consumption.
Mindy often bargains with kill buyers to save horses from slaughter. She says the equine information document is seen as nothing more than a nuisance.
If you really want to know what the kill buyers think about that, they think it's the biggest joke going. Basically, the EID, it's whatever somebody decides they want to put on it. Because theoretically, they're supposed to be 6 months drug-free. So theoretically then, the kill buyer would have to keep this horse for 6 months so that he would then have some type of medical, at least a 6-month medical history on this horse. They do not do that.
If our regulations state that it's a lifetime ban, why do we even have a 6-month document?
MP Alex Adamanenko knows better than most Canada is no stranger to tainted meat scandals. He was agriculture critic during the listeriosis crisis that killed 23 people in 2008. But he says the horse meat business is different.
We've had lapses in our industry. We've seen that with listeriosis. We've seen that with Maple Leaf Foods. When those lapses occur, everybody works really, really hard to correct them. None of this is happening in the horse slaughter industry.
Out of nearly 87,000 horses slaughtered per year since 2010, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency tested an average of 385 samples, less than 0.5%. The agency claims 98% of those samples tested clean, but declined our request for an on-camera interview.
I never saw or heard of the CFIA doing drug screening. As usual, you have a government agency who's ass-covering and full of
Shervin says government inspectors are stretched much too thin to examine every animal before they get slaughtered, as required by law.
The horses were coming in many times, offloaded right into the hold pen outside the plant, and 15 minutes later they're being killed. They see that animal for how long? Seconds. So did they have time to get out and do this and do that and do everything that they're supposed to do? My personal opinion is no.
He says rather than admit there's a problem, the CFIA continues to look the other way.
Have they got their ostrich ass in the air and their head in the sand? Yeah. Who is auditing the documents to make sure that that farmer or that producer or that supplier of that horse is telling the truth? There is no traceability. Yes, the CFIA has changed regulations, but if you actually look at what's actually going on in the industry, it's window dressing and, pardon my expression, horse shit.
Jeff Groff buys dozens of horses and ships them out for slaughter every month. He believes if the CFIA really wanted to improve the system, it could be done with a simple change.
If it was freeze branded that it had been given butazone, the horse would signify right on the horse that there's butazone in this horse. It's no longer valid for human consumption.
But Henry says that won't happen because the agency charged with making Canada's food industry safe relies on the industry to regulate itself.
The agency literature states in almost every opening paragraph of anything that they put out that they are not responsible for food safety. The industry is responsible for food safety.
So you kind of have to ask yourself, what is the mandate?
MP Alex Adamanenko says the Canadian Food Inspection Agency would rather protect the industry than make sure it's safe. So he's drawn up a new piece of legislation that would require lifetime veterinary records for all horses going to slaughter.
If there's someone in Canada that wants to raise horses for human consumption, you know, that meat would then be safe. This is not the case the way it is today.
If they only accepted horses with traceable medical records, there would be no industry. It would take somebody to die before they will pay attention. That's what it's going to take.
We asked the slaughterhouses in our story if they plan to change their business practices, but up until now, they haven't responded to our requests for interviews. We'll be right back.